Let's get real. Welcome to TBC Today. This podcast features friends in and around the Triad Baptist Church community. Hear encouraging real-life stories from our weekly guests and inspiring insights from our host, Pastor Rob. To learn more about Triad Baptist Church in Kernersville, North Carolina, visit us online at tbcnow.org.
Well, welcome to TBC Today. Now, we've got an exciting episode for you. I'm pretty excited myself to be here with Steve Woodall. I've known Steve for a long time, and Steve's a member of our church. You've actually been a member of our church for about 14 years. He's been married for 36 years, has 3 kids and several grandkids. And you're a part of our worship team here at the church. And he is the director of our Restart Ministry. It's a great ministry here. And so we're going to talk today about how to be positive and how to be focused on Christ during difficult times. So, Pastor Rob, let's get real.
Let's get real. We'll start the sands of time. And that's our timer, Steve, to keep us on track here. But we're so glad to have you today. Glad you could be a part of our podcast today. And we just want to kind of jump right in and get started with you. Tell us a little bit about how you got saved and really how you met your wife. And tell us some of the things in your early part of your year that kind of led up to where you are today.
Okay. When I was probably around 5 or 6 years old, I was at my dad's house in the den. And my dad the fire was burning. I have an identical twin brother. And Mom was sitting there, and he was talking to me about, where would you die if you went to hell? This is where you would spend. And that day, I accepted Christ into my life. My brother does not remember anything about it, but I remember everything about it, where God had entered into my life, and for there it started my pathway to where I'm at right now. Then my dad was a pastor. He got saved in 1960 in the ministry of Jack Hudson, Northside Baptist Church, and was called to preach. And then he started a church in Charlotte, and then moved to Concord, where we stayed for the most part of it until about 83, and then we moved to Pennsylvania, and where I met Amy up there. She walked into the door, and I was like, I'm gonna marry that girl. And
What town was that?
Waynesburg, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
What door was that?
It was in the cafeteria, and she walked in, and I told my buddy Paul, I said, I'm gonna marry that girl, and he said, whatever, Steve. I was like, no, I'm gonna marry her. And he said, yeah, okay, Steve. Well, here it is, all these years later. It was
3 kids and grandkids.
We got 3 kids, and we got two boys and a girl, and 5 grandkids. And anyway, God, even though my ignorance at the time, he saw fit to bring her into my life, and because she's been my rock through all this, and through everything that's going on and that's happened in my life. And she's definitely a godsend, and with me every day, stuck with me through the rough times, and she's still with me today. But anyway, we got married in 1986, and June the 7th, and moved down here, and went back up there for a little bit of time. We come back to Charlotte, and my dad eventually moved from Pennsylvania at a church he was up there back to Concord, and started pastoring a church in Concord, where I had ran from God for a very long time.
How old were you at this time?
Around 27.
And married.
Yeah.
27 and married, living in Concord around your dad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. I had started, and my dad told me when I was young, when I was 18, got ready to move out, when I was still in Pennsylvania, he said, Steve, you will not change the world will change you. And the world did change me. I became like them. And Rosie Greer, the big old football player, gave his testimony at Northside Baptist Church. And I went today. He was only supposed to speak like 15 minutes, and he ended up speaking the whole service. And anyway, it's like the Lord said to me that day, he said, Steve, this is done. You've been running from me long enough. I knew it inside me, but I never told us what was going on inside my life. I just knew I was running from God on the inside. And I remember stepping out, and when I was still walking at the time, I stepped out in the aisle, and I turned and looked. I'm like, what am I doing here? And the Lord said, Steve, today's the day. We're getting this stuff straightened out today. And I remember going forward and rededicating my life to the Lord. And going back on Friday, I left work being one way, and when I come in on Monday morning, I was a whole new different person, trying to change from what the guys knew me from on Friday So that day I was like, Lord, how am I
So,
gonna-"
like, what were you like before? Were you like drinking, stuff like that?
You know, just
carousing,
drinking,
whatever?
carousing around, yeah, and just
And you were even married and you were doing
yeah,
that.
oh yeah, yeah.
Was
Just,
she upset with that, or she was okay, or?
she was just okay with it. I kind of hid it from her at times, but I just knew in my heart I became that cold-hearted person that's almost become callous over the most non-caring person, did not care for her, things that are around me, because the enemy had come in and just like he had taken over. But inside my heart, I never told a soul what was going on inside me, but God knew. And so I knew that in my heart there had to be a change. And when I went to work that Monday morning, I took a Bible in there and I opened the Bible up. And the guys came in there and they laughed at me, went to job sites, and they said, Steve, they're laughing you to scorn. I was like, I'll just let them laugh on. And I had gospel tracts. I laid it on my couch, working at a heating and air place at the time, and I laid gospel tracts on the counter, and they would come to the window to get parts, and they started picking it up, and then I became my mission field. The guys would see it, and they would wait till after work, and they'd come up and talk to me after work, after the hours and stuff was over with. And so once they would come up, I had to get a chance to witness to them, lead some guys to the Christ from being in that time. So then eventually quit that job, started doing construction work with my twin brother, and was at my dad's church. And it was like the Lord told me that it was time for me to go. We had just bought a house. I was sharing with the Army just a little bit ago that we had just bought our first house, and like the Lord said, Steve, you're going to go to Gospel Light Baptist Church, where we went to. So we packed up everything we had there and moved up here to
From Concord to
Walkertown.
Walkertown?
Walkertown, yeah. And started serving the Lord and get involved in the bus ministry there. And Steve, I was telling Jeremy that Steve Bird he was doing a testimony that he was preaching revival for us on Tuesday night. And he said some people are letting a distance drive. And we were driving from Concord to Walkertown every weekend. On Wednesday night, we were driving back and forth. And he said some of you are letting something stop you from doing what God's called you to go do. So I started working in the bus ministry. Started serving the Lord, but then I started walking back on God by not having the relationship of my Bible reading, my devotions with God on the day. I was serving God, going to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. Every revival come, everything was open up, business, the church, the bus kids on Saturday. But my walk with God just fell. And in March the 22nd of 1997, I had a motorcycle accident.
Where were you?
Walkertown, Guthrie Road. Matter of fact, Amy was on the back of the bike with me, and we went to my brother's house. We came back. I had dropped her off and picked his truck up, so she went home, and I was on the way back there when I went into a curve and lost control of the bike. Went off the side of the road, and I pole vaulted me into a tree and broke my back, my pelvis, both my hips. Had ruptured my spleen, and that night the doctor came in and told Amy and them around. They didn't know anything like this had even happened to me, that I had ruptured a spleen, that I was in bad shape. My brother found me in the hospital by going around searching intensive care. They had not let them know what was going on until that night around 11 or 12 o'clock that night. The doc came in and told Amy, said that Steve has 45 minutes to live. And he said he's bleeding internally. He's ruptured his spleen. He's bleeding internally. If we can't get this stopped, and then he said in 45 minutes he'll be gone. So
Were you unconscious the whole time,
Yes,
even when
yeah.
as soon as you hit the tree, you don't remember anything?
I remember I came to at the accident scene. I remember waking up, and I tried to get up, and I looked up, and my left femur was broken. It was laying this way, and I looked up, and I saw my left leg laying, and I tried to get up, and I just knew I was in trouble. So I took my helmet off. Then a friend of mine, Barry, had called Amy and said, Steve hit a tree, and Amy says, what did you do that for? And she said, Barry, he hit a tree. So Amy comes there, and they're loading me in the ambulance. By this time, they had done set my leg back. I guess I was in such shock that they set my leg back in place, and I went on from there. Of course, they'd taken me to the hospital. And I remember talking to the men on the way to the hospital, telling them where I lived at, everything, what day it was. I told them everything. But once we got to the hospital, I have no recollection of that. Any time after that, they had put me into pretty much a self-induced coma and brought me back. And then
Were you in excruciating pain?
No, I had no pain whatsoever.
Because it was all
Yeah,
blocked.
it was all shock. I could not
Your
feel
spine
anything.
had been broken, and that's so you didn't know anything, and that's why you were kind of conscious and talking.
Right, yeah. I just had that little bit of sense about him where I just told him everything. And then that night that Amy told me, she said that when they came in and told her, she said, I just lost it for 10 minutes. And she said, I just wept because the person who I cared for so much was fixing to be taken from me.
Meeting after they told you about the 45 minutes.
Yeah. And Amy said, about 10 minutes into it, she said, the peace of God just came over me. I rolled over on the chairs and went to sleep. And Doc came in 45 minutes later. His name was Michael Chang. And he came back in 45 minutes later, clapping his hands. He says, we got the bleeding stopped. He said, if he can make it the next 48 hours, then he's going to be okay. And, I was in the coma for 2.5 weeks until I finally came out of it. And then-
Induced coma.
Self-induced coma.
And I remember when that happened, and all of us praying, because I was at church with you, and I was a teenager, and I just remember how we would have these prayer times, even at school, in high school, and I had a lot of prayer times for you, and just lifting you up that the Lord would perform a miracle, and He did,
Yes. Yes.
which is pretty cool.
Just to hear stories of like what had happened with people and people that were praying through the whole United States, and my name went out to missionaries and people were praying. I remember them telling me that when my mother-in-law was with us at the time, they went to church that Sunday morning, and Brother Bobby was at the time. He said, I want y'all, if anyone wants to pray for Steve, I want you to come to the altar. And they said the altar was packed with people praying for me. And it's like the Lord just gave me that second chance after all my surgery. I spent 74 days in the hospital. And when I came back out, it's like the Lord had to lay me flat on my back because I went through my process in my head. It's like, God, why did you do this? Why did you put me into the wheelchair? Why did you confine me to this? And it's like He had a purpose, that He had to lay me flat on my back before He would get my attention. He had to completely, as you preached in your message before, sometimes you have to be broken completely before God can use you, because He knows me. If I would have rolled me off in that field, I would jump back on a motorcycle again. And of course I did back in 2000. I got back on another bike again and broke a hip again. So messed up the second time. But
Like, in your condition, you got back on a bike?
yeah, my buddy, friend of mine, came over to the house with a motorcycle, and he pulled up and I said, I want to ride. He said, well, I can put you on the back. I said, no, I'm going to drive. He said, what? I said, I'm going to drive.
With him on the back?
I said, you're going to put your feet down. You're going to balance the
Well,
bike.
he was
when
a
you
brave
take-
guy.
I said, when you take off, I said, I got the controls on it, and he worked the gas, not the brakes, but I had the brakes up front, but he had the gear shift on he
Yeah.
broke the front and back. And we run up on Sunday morning, the Lord told me, He said, Steve, don't get back on that bike again. I did it on Saturday. On Sunday morning, He said, Steve, don't get back on that bike again. And I was arguing with the Lord in church. He said, Steve, don't you do it. And I got back on again that afternoon and fell over. Bike tilted over. Rob didn't get his feet down in time. The bike fell over, and I fell over and busted my left hip and broke it again.
Oh, my goodness.
And I ended up back in the hospital again.
You are part crazy. I can't believe you're even alive
I
today.
would agree with that, yeah.
And the people who fell in love with you, they fell in love with crazy. That's,
But Frank Shoemate, I remember he came up to the hospital and he goes, Woodall, he goes, what have you done? I said, Frank, you ever done something the Lord told you not to do? I said, yeah. I said, this one cost me about $10,000. That's all, man. It's all good.
Oh, my goodness.
that is unbelievable.
Yeah.
What was it? I mean, is it just something in you? You got that kind of
No
drive
fear.
in you.
No fear.
Yeah.
One thing I've learned about if you put your mind to it, you're going to do it. Now, whether it's against the Lord or not, but I'm thinking even when it's for the Lord, you have a mindset in you. Is that just your personality? I mean, you put your mind to something, you're going to make it happen.
Yeah. I tried to go out and try to live that life out. It's like once I got, and I didn't really realize the importance of life until it was taken away from me with my accident, of doing the things with my kids, like going and playing soccer. That was a huge thing. It's still a huge thing. You think with my grandkids right now that I don't get to go out and play soccer with them or go to the ocean, and you get out on the beach out there and you see granddads or fathers sitting on the sidelines and not doing anything with the kids. I'm like, go out and play with these kids,
Yeah.
because, it means the world these kids. And, you know, there's something that's been taken from me that when I get to wake up every day and see life, I chose to view it in a different perspective on that right there.
So
So-
you didn't have much. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so when you found out you were confined to a wheelchair, I mean, how did that affect you? Did
Did it make you angry?
because
Did you go through a
you're
series
such
of
a
anger?
positive person, and so knowing you the way we know you now, it seems like it wouldn't even affect you. You were just like, let's just roll on. But did it? I mean, did it have were you depressed, or did it cause?
No, I never was depressed. On matter of fact, they took me to my therapist up in the hospital. She said, Steve, I want you to go to this psychiatric meeting with people get together and all these people around. So I went into this room with a psychiatrist, and she said, Steve, she goes, everybody gave their testimony. And there was one guy was talking about dying and how they were experienced and how what the people did through there. I was like, Lord, how am I gonna do this? I said, when it came my turn, I said, Lord, and I told them, I said, whether I walk out of here on 2 feet or whether I roll out of here on 4 wheels, I said, God is still in control. I still have my God, my church, my family, and my church, my friends. I'm good to go with it. It's like the Lord never, like he said, Steve, here's your wheelchair. Now let's go to your next venture that you're fixing to go to in life. So that's where I picked it up. And I've never been able to experience that. Even for this coming next month will be 25 years I've been confined to the chair. But it's like the Lord has never let me experience that level
Yeah.
of being confined to a wheelchair, being depressed, anything else that I've gone on with that right there. Yeah.
That's amazing because I watch these guys on TV, the Olympic guys, and they talk about the anger they went through, and then they finally had to get a fight back in them, and they started going into these Olympic what do you call it?
Paralympics, yeah.
Paralympics, yeah. And you see them had to go through a journey to come to that. It's almost like you came to the journey right away.
Yeah. He was like, the psychiatrist came up into my meeting, come out to me the very next day, and I told my therapist. She said, Steve, what'd you think about the meeting? And I said, I'm good. And she goes, I said, I'm not going back in that meeting no more. I said, I'm more depressed now than I was when I went into the meeting. And she said, well, and the psychiatrist came to my room next day, and she said, Steve, I understand if you're sad or you're angry or you're depressed. I said, listen, lady, I'm not sad, I'm not angry, I ain't depressed, and I'm not coming back in your class no more. I'm just saying because it was like I knew that I had to go to get to a certain point to get out of that hospital to be what I'm supposed to go do in this life.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's almost like pulling your time being in prison. I said to them, I was like, don't hold me in here. I told the doctor this one Saturday afternoon. I said, don't hold me in here because y'all can't figure this thing out. They were wanting to see that, what you talked about, the breaking of an individual and the brokenness, because they thought I was going to go home. I said to him, you cannot hold my hand now, and you can't hold my hand at home. This is something I got to figure out on my own. So if you'll just let me go and let me get home and figure this thing out, then I'll be good to go.
And what'd they say?
About a couple weeks later, they let me go.
And what would they have kept you for? Another few months?
I don't know. He didn't say.
So what was Amy's part in this? Did she help you learn all kind of how to redo life?
Yeah, it was us together, because I was telling someone just the other day that she goes, God, you got to help us out here, because there's no way in the world I can take care of Steve and take care of the 3 kids and try to work and do all these things and try to maintain. It's like an oversized grown kid trying to take care of these things, but over the period of time, learn how to do things on my own, get the car acceptable driving, be able to go about my business. And
So Amy didn't go through any kind of phase where she kind of was really down about the fact that this happened to my husband. She was like, kept a spirit like you did?
yeah, she did. She gave it time, and matter of fact, we were in the hospital. I gave her that. I mean, she came into me the hospital room one day, and I gave her that opportunity to leave, because I had peace with God. And I said, you are welcome to leave, because we're fixing to go into a phase of our life where we've never been before, ever. So if you walk out of here, I'm good. And she goes, I'm not going to leave you. I have no, how can you say that? I said, I was just giving you in case you ever want to get out. You can never say, I never gave you that opportunity. Just saying.
It was her one out, right?
It was her once and done.
Yeah.
You never asked her again.
No, I never asked her that question again.
Well, I mean, I'm safe she'd made it with you 25 more years
Yeah,
after
absolutely.
this accident, then you're probably pretty good.
The one thought that comes through my mind is, I see you, always trying to have a positive spirit, always trying to represent the Lord, always trying to see God in focus. And sometimes I wonder, is there there are times you just get alone, though, and crash and just say, this stinks and I'm sick of it. And I mean, I don't ever feel that from you. And I always wonder, is he fake? I wonder if a lot of people look at you and
Right.
say he's just playing a game.
Now, at times I have those moments where where I feel like the enemy comes and like trying to oppress what God has done in my life. And to see God now in a different perspective, I learned from being under your ministry is like develop the relationship with Christ, where when the relationship was developed, I started to be able to see. I said, God, where I can't understand where you are. I mean, I want to know that you're real in my life. I want you to see that point. And yes, I've had moments where I go through those down times, but I cannot stay in that moment because, listen, I said, you said it's 80-20. You got the 80%, you're good. Sometimes it's 20. I run on 96 or 97% running all the time, but there's that 3% where you do have down times. But you, like God said, Steve, I got a purpose and a mission for you to go do in this life. Now you need to fulfill what I've called you to go do in this life. And I was talking to Alan Calmer one day, and Alan says to me, he says, Steve, what happened to your life? He said, how did you change? What changed in your moment, in your time, in your life that caused you to see God in a different perspective? I said, it was my praise. And he goes, your praise? I said, absolutely. He said, your praise changed your prayer life and everything there is about you. I said, yes. I said, because I was never taught how to see God or see God in my midst or wherever I was doing. But when I started giving him praise, in Psalms chapter 100, verse number 4, it says, enter into his gates with thanksgiving, but when you enter into that court, you enter into it with praise. It's your hands lifted high. I said, God, I'm thankful to be here, but when you enter into that court and what God has done in your life, then we give him praise. When I ask the Lord for a request now and I see him moving, sometimes I'm alone time is when I just raise hands to God and say, God, I give you praise for what you've done. And when I started doing that, God started showing himself more and more. I knew that God was the center part of my life, where he was showing up, and he's always on time. That clock keeps ticking, and God's always on. He's the one constant in my life, that knowing that God goes before so that you can come after. When my dad passed away in 2006, we was at the funeral, and he said, the minister said, I want to know how many people that was here were saved under minister, Preacher Woodall. And half the congregation stood up. And I said, God, my dad had this. I turned and looked to my left, and I saw what had happened. And the Lord says, like, Steve, what are you going to do? And I was like, God, I want to serve you. I can't fill his shoes. He said, I'm not asking you to fill his shoes, but what are you going to do? Are you going to pick the torch up? Are you going to go forward with the torch that I have laid, that he has given you? And I said, yes. And that was the defining moment in 2006 where I stepped. It's like, listen, Lord, I've got all my goals that I have in this life are to, in the very moment, is to serve God in the moment, but it's for the things that are fixing to come. Because the moment a little bit of time that I have suffering here on this earth is nothing to be compared to what's fixing to happen on the other side. I don't know what's over there, but I'm like my dad did, was throwing all the rewards and stuff of people that he had led to Christ over to the other side, and knowing when he got there, there was far greater rewards over there than it was here in this life. He lived here for 72 years and served God since 1960, and he was the one constant in my life that was the faithful person that I followed, that I emulate my life after. Of course, he probably had things wrong, but I never knew it. I just saw him as that one constant in my life.
That's incredible.
Yes.
Just how important, even to the end, your dad stayed on track.
Yeah.
You know, how important that is to not throw it away. And it made you be motivated then to do the same thing.
Right. I told Wendy and him just a while ago when I came in the door, and I tell people I've started living my life like this. You get one life in one shot. We got to make it happen for this very moment that we're in. You'll never, ever get this day ever again in your entire life. So live life to the fullest. Live it to the max, because the battle has already been won.
Yeah.
We're on the battlefield. But in our minds, we already know that the victories are won. So why are we resting in the moment of being defeated when we know the victory's won? We're to stand up and boldly walk before the throne. You have been chosen in this life to serve God and to give your life as an example to people that are around you. And the people that we talk about, God, me and my buddy Roddy, we talk about this, is that God fills the bucket up on a daily basis, and you are to pour your life into every individual that you come in contact with. Any person that you come in contact with on a daily basis is an opportunity to spread the gospel, spread who Christ is, how God is doing the work inside your life. Whatever it's in a thought, a conversation, whatever you're going through, lifting that person up in prayer. And we get to live this life.
So is that what motivates you to be such a servant? Because
Yes.
you're so involved and you serve in every capacity that you can. We even sometimes, like in our Christmas plays or something, we'll just say, "Hey, will you do this?" And you're like, "Okay, I'll do it." Will you sing? Well, I've never done that solo, but yeah, I'll do it. So
Right.
there's something about you that you just are so willing to serve and do for other people.
Years ago, when we came here, then I was on the deacon board and was on the praise team and helping the Awanas, and then eventually came to being on the ELT and being able to serve in these ministries. I called my mom up one day. I was like, "Mom," I said, "the weight is heavy, Mom." She said, "Steve, you get to serve God." I'll never forget where I was at when she said those words. And I was like, "Lord, I get to do this.
Yeah.
This is what I get to do in life. My main goal is to focus your attention on you. When you seek God with all of your heart, all of your soul, and all of your mind, you're going to find him." So when that moment in time comes, like, Steve, you pour into these people. Let's see people. When I see God work and somebody says, "Steve, I want a part of what you got," I say, I don't tell you stories so you can think that I'm big. I'm telling you stories because I want you to believe this. Sometimes I think we go through this Christian walk is like, do we really believe this can happen? Do we really believe that God can do do his work in our lives? Do we put a belief into a God that will take us to a place that we've never seen, to a God we've never seen, to one day to be with him forever? But when it comes to our needs, do we really believe these things? And like, Steve, you are to emulate this life of Christ into people's lives so they can believe and have that relationship to eventually become changed, to become that individual, and he'll change that person, and that person will change another person. It's a domino effect.
That's incredible. How come you never became a preacher? I mean, you got it all in you. I can feel it in you coming out. Pretty soon you're going to have people in the altar. We're going to all be down before the altar.
I just never felt that one, like my brother felt that. Because I asked my dad that years ago. I was like, "Dad, how do you know that you're called to preach?" And he said, "Steve, you'll just know. I can't tell you. You'll just know these."
So you never had that calling, but ministry was big on your list.
Right.
Some of your ministries here, like I think the being in the praise team, for example, up there in a wheelchair, that speaks volumes to people. Here's a guy who says, "What's your excuse?" We got no excuse. And you kept the spirit that keeps people engaged and kept a spirit before God that just said, "You can do it. I did it. It's possible." And you don't have to be fake. You can be real. You can struggle, but still you can push forward. So you did that with the praise team. You've done it with the Restart. That spirit in there. I mean, I've sat in a couple of the sessions and just realizing just the power of that group, the honesty, the openness. I mean, it's just real. And
Well, tell us about Restart, and how did that even start here at this church, and then what is it about, and how can it help people who may be listening and struggling with addictions?
When I came here, June the 1st of 2008, my buddy Rodney told me, he said, "You're going to start this ministry." It was a Reformation emphasis that Dick Lockhart had at the time. I had been over at Reformation emphasis Gospel Light for about 2 years, but little did I know God was training me in the process to come here to run this ministry here. And I remember Rodney said to me, he said, "Steve, you're going to start this ministry." I was like, "Man, I'm just here to check this church out. I'm just like, what I'm doing." He said, "No," he said, "I've been praying that God would send someone here, and you're it."
Yeah.
I was like, "You do it, and I'll help you out." He
how
said,
come
"No."
he became such a friend to you? Is that how he met you, or how do you know
yeah,
you?
just through Reformation Emphasis.
Just through Reformers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. And
'Cause he's like a tight buddy to you.
yeah, we have prayer together every day, and we've been doing this for like a year and a half right now. We have prayer. We cosmet and we talk. We have prayer every day.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and so he had told me that he had talked to you about it at the time. And I don't know if you remember this or not, but he kept me and said, "Steve, when you gonna start the ministry?" I said, I'm not, because the biggest fear was I can't do this, but God can. I knew that I couldn't do it, and for 6 months you had called and said, "Steve, you gonna start the ministry?" You're like, "We're gonna do it." I was like, "No, I'm not doing it." It's like the Lord said to me, "Steve, it's not about you, it's about me." And you've shared well over the period of years how people have walked into our ministry and out of our ministry, people that have been helped along the way. But that's what happened in 2009 is like, God says, "Steve, it's not about you, it's about me." So when I let go and surrendered at altar and I started the ministry, we started by helping the ministry get back on its feet again. We've been running since February of 2009 up until this present day. And on Friday nights, we have our devotions on Friday night, and we talk about the problems with people's heart it's in the heart. So what are we doing with the heart? How is God doing? How is He going to do the work inside of people's heart? What are we going to do with that? And we pray about the ministry on Friday night, ask God to show us the message that we're supposed to do, and then when we get done at nighttime, it's about what He has done, not about what we have done. We surrender that whole ministry over to it. It's God's ministry. We're just there as tools to minister to people's heart. You know, we're there for 2 hours and try to get people to get the mask off, because people walk into church every Sunday morning with masks on their faces and they're covering who they really are, because they don't want to let someone know what's in their heart, because it will expose them for what they've done. You know, and I think with James chapter 5, when it talks about if you confess your faults one to another, you may be healed. You got to find that one individual where you can talk to them and get that burden off of you. So many people come into our group on a Friday night, they just break down the first night that they're there and just spill everything else because they've been carrying the weight for so long.
That's what I've seen.
And just like, they just let it out.
Yeah.
And we minister to that person. We will stop the whole set. Pastor Rob would attest to it. We stop the whole ministry and go and have prayer over that individual right then and there, because their life is at stake. Everyone who comes is that their life is at stake, and you mess one other day, one other moment, and your life can be refined on that one Friday night to be a stepping stool to go up for the rest of your life. So,
Yeah. You know, one thing I always saw you as was David's mighty men. You look at David's mighty men, they didn't start out that way. Remember, David ran and had to get away from Saul.
Right.
And the maimed started coming to him, the losers, the people with no money. It was like a whole gang of people that could do nothing, and God said, that's what I'm going to use.
yeah. You got to be broken before God can do
Yeah.
that.
And those people coming in broken and honest is so powerful.
Yeah.
And people don't see that. Nobody sees that. And until you experience that, you realize that in your brokenness, now God's going to make you a mighty man.
Right.
You know, so it's cool.
So the ministry is Restart, and it's on our campus on Friday nights.
Yep, G216 from.
Tell us who it's for and who can
Anybody wants to
come, and
come.
open invitation.
Right. It's crazy part about this is, I've been told before, is y'all don't advertise the program. I can't bring them in. I want God to bring these people, and they find their way into our group on Friday nights.
Yeah.
So many people have walked off of that street into our ministry looking for help, and they find their way to our room. There is no advertisements, no signs, nowhere. God directs them, and they find us on a Friday night, and they walk. We never know. We have no idea who's going to step through that door on a Friday night to be able to start their work, and we just try to engulf them as a family and be drawn to them and so they can experience that, because it's a trust issue. When people first step in, they don't know anything about the trust issue, and I'm fixing to go into a room and the first thing is getting through that door.
Yeah.
Once you get in the door and you experience the people, their love for people, and the growth, and the people that can surround you and love you and care for you, then that's what we did. I led a man to the Lord about a year or so ago, and he comes to our program now, been faithful, and I watched him change every Friday. I'd see him, meet him in the hallway, and I seen the look, the expressions on his face start to change. I'm watching this person's countenance change over the period of weeks, and about a month and a half into it, he was like, became a different individual.
Yeah.
And if it was meant for one person in this life, then that's
worth
what
it.
it is.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
right.
good.
Yeah. And then you've got Sharing Hope, right? That meets on Friday night as well.
Yes.
Sherry Harvey's ministry. And so that's for parents.
Yes.
Right? Or yeah. Tell us a little bit about that real quick.
Well, she's just there to bring support for parents that are struggling, because she's been through it as a parent, struggling right there. Matter of fact, we had a guy, Robert Kohler, that had lost his daughter. Robert spoke for us Friday night to see from the parent standpoint what he had to experience and how he processed this stuff all inside of his heart when he lost his daughter. But he is like an advocate now
Yeah.
to spread the word about how he had coped with that, and how what Sherry can minister to other people. And we have other couples now that come inside there. How God, he's just awesome, and he's always on time, because he brings that person
Yeah.
over the period of time. When one person steps out, God is always already on the move. He's bringing that one person to our pathway, and that's what faith and confidence, that you know that God's fixing to do the eternal work inside you.
Yeah.
Because He's meant for you to prosper and not fail in this life. So I know in my confidence in God Almighty that He is coming. There was a pastor years ago, and he said, God goes before so you can come after. He clears the pathway. So if He's done cleared the pathway, even I'm going through a trial, He's going to be the king.
Yeah.
Rob preached a message years ago, and I don't know if you remember the guy that you stood in the center and you put the circle around, walking around, and you said, Then the circle was the outside. You put another circle on the outside. People walk around. He said, if you're in the midst of your storm and you can look up and you can see God, then you will experience victory. I'll never forget the message.
That's good.
Just like you always keep your eyes upon Him and not look at your surroundings, because sometimes when we look at our surroundings, I try not to look at the things that are surrounding me, because the enemy can come in and try to bring you down. And through your family and friends and people come into us, almost like toxic things sometimes will go into it. And it's like, Lord, keep my eyes upon you, focused on you, where I'm going, the prize. Keep your eyes on the high calling, the prize that God has set before you, whatever it is in your life. And if there's, like, comes a time when you're down, you have to get yourself back up. If you stay in there, you choose to stay there, you have to find a way to get back up beside Him.
Preach. He said he's not a preacher. He's done nothing but
He
preach
said he's
the
not a
whole
preacher,
time.
but that's, yeah, exactly.
Well, go ahead.
That's great.
I think we're about out of time.
That's been really good. It's been a great conversation here with Steve, and just someone who's meant a lot to me and has encouraged me a lot through the years. And a lot of people, I hear stories all the time, people just telling me how they ran into Steve or they met Steve and he encouraged them. I've even sent some people, go find Steve Woodall. He'll make you feel better. And so I think that's true. This has been a great episode. If you like the episode, then make sure you like it and share it with a friend. Of course, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're watching it. If you want to know more about Restart, that ministry for addictions, or Sharing Hope, visit us online at tbcnow.org. And we've got information on our website that'll tell you where to go and how to meet Steve. And I think that would be a great opportunity for you or someone that you may know who is just needing a little help or a little bit of encouragement. We hope you have a great week, and we'll see you on our next episode.
Thanks for joining us this week on TBC Today. We want to connect with you, so make sure to visit our website, tbcnow.org, and subscribe, rate, and review the show in iTunes, Spotify, or Amazon Music. Don't forget to share this episode with a friend, and be on the lookout for our next conversation.